Imagine a machine once so perfectly calibrated, so ruthlessly efficient, that it completely dominated the globe. We're talking about four-time world champions here. A nation whose very name used to strike absolute fear into the hearts of opponents before they even stepped onto the pitch. But what happens when those gears just grind to a halt? When the identity of a legendary footballing empire completely fractures? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be looking at the tactical rebuild, the very real internal drama, and the monumental task facing the German national team as they march toward the 2026 World Cup.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because, look, this isn't just about winning a few football matches. This is about national pride. How exactly does a team that has historically been the ultimate tournament powerhouse pull itself out of a literal downward spiral? The weight of that badge is incredibly heavy, and the desperation to return to the pinnacle of world football, you can feel it. It's palpable. To really understand the rebuild, we kind of have to look at the wreckage first. And the contrast here is staggering. Back in 2014, they were unstoppable. They were kings of the world. But in 2018 and 2022? Unthinkable. Frankly, humiliating group stage exits. The harmony inside the camp was completely broken. And the fan base? They were losing their minds. Actually, during a World Cup qualification match against Northern Ireland, the frustration boiled over so much that the crowd almost turned into a mob simply because Germany did not look like Germany anymore. The standards on the pitch had dropped drastically, but those expectations? They remained sky high. They were desperate for a savior. Which brings us to our first main topic, Nagelsmann's revolution and rebuilding a shattered team. You have to understand, the new manager walked right into a pressure cooker. When Julian Nagelsmann took over, the skepticism was deafening. Fans were openly asking, why did we get this guy? We should have gone after Jurgen Klopp. And let's be honest, Klopp casts a massive shadow over all of German football. Every single time the job opens up, he gives that cheeky grin of his and says he's good for now. So Nagelsmann didn't just have to rebuild a broken tactical system, he had to win over a fan base that was actively wishing someone else was standing on the touchline. But let's not underestimate Julian Nagelsmann. 28. Just let that number sink in for a second. At just 28 years old, an age where most players are barely hitting their absolute peak, he became the youngest permanent head coach in Bundesliga history. He took over TSG Hoffenheim when they were sitting 17th, deep in the relegation zone, and he engineered what became known as the Great Escape. He didn't just save them from the drop, he eventually took them all the way to the UEFA Champions League. The guy is widely regarded as one of the smartest, most radical young coaches in world football. Let's look at his tactical flexibility and how he's moving the chess pieces. The absolutely crucial point here is that Nagelsmann's Germany is anything but rigid. Sure, they might start with a pretty structured 4-2-3-1 base, but modern football isn't static, right? In possession, this shape literally breathes. It seamlessly transitions into this fluid, highly dangerous 4-3-3. It's all about positional rotations, aggressive pressing systems, and creating overloads all over the pitch. Suddenly, a team that looks slow and totally predictable back in 2022 is starting to look incredibly organized and incredibly lethal. However, this tactical revolution doesn't come without some massive controversy. Take Joshua Kimmich. He's the captain and a world-class central midfielder, but he's being deployed at right back. Nagelsmann is essentially using him to build a defensive wall on that right flank. But critics are quick to point out that Kimmich lacks the pure, raw pace to handle elite explosive wingers. You know, those players that just catch fire on the touchline, like Vinicius Jr. Yet Nagelsmann remains completely stubborn on this. He is more than willing to sacrifice a bit of midfield control to execute his defensive vision. Let's move on to something really exciting. The new golden generation and the rising stars. Guys, this is the trio that makes this team terrifying going forward. First, we have Jamal Musiala, the absolute X factor, bringing this unpredictable skill and flair that just breaks defenses apart. Then you have Florian Wirtz, the creative brain of the operation, who is in unbelievable form right now, constantly finding those tiny pockets of space. And pulling the whole shebang together is Kai Havertz. He operates as a false nine, dropping deep and linking the play perfectly. This front line has the movement, the creativity, and the pure chemistry that Germany completely lacked in Qatar. They are young, dynamic, and the absolute core of this rebuild. If you want to know why Germany is suddenly fun to watch again, this trio right here is the answer. But it's not a perfect fairy tale just yet. Up next is turbulence and tension, the unresolved drama. See, Nagelsmann has adopted a very strict, almost rigid communication style behind the scenes. He tells players months in advance if they're going to be starters or bench players, but sometimes it backfires spectacularly in public. Take Deniz Undav. He comes off the bench, scores a brilliant winning goal, and instead of just praising him, Nagelsmann spends the post-match press conference saying, and I quote, "He's a bench player. If he'd started, he probably would have been too tired by this point to score." Wow. He openly casts aspersions on his own players' fitness. And this brilliantly illustrates the tension, because right now, Deniz Undav is arguably the #1 most informed German striker in world football. He's a natural instinctive goal scorer. Yet Nagelsmann prefers the link-up play of Havertz and refuses to budge, even going out of his way to publicly justify benching his most lethal finisher. It's the kind of stubbornness that is completely baffling fans and creating a lot of unnecessary friction.
And then we have the ultimate elephant in the room, the goalkeeping situation. Marc-Andre ter Stegen has a nasty hamstring injury, which has forced veterans like Oliver Baumann to step in. But looming over this entire squad is the 40-year-old exiled legend himself, Manuel Neuer. You really have to ask, why isn't the best keeper in Germany's modern history coming to the rescue right now?
Well, it all comes down to a deeply personal rift. During Nagelsmann's time managing Bayern Munich, while Neuer was out injured, Nagelsmann actually fired Neuer's closest confidant and goalkeeping coach. It deeply, deeply hurt Neuer. According to the sources, unless Nagelsmann swallows his pride and goes back cap in hand to apologize and practically beg Neuer to return, nothing is going to happen. So heading into a defining World Cup, Germany has a massive, glaring question mark in goal, all because of a managerial grudge.
Now let's look at the brutal road to 2026, where success is a semi-final minimum.
For a nation like Germany, just getting out of the group isn't enough anymore, not by a long shot. They are heavily projected to easily win Group E, with a 78% probability of finishing first, comfortably ahead of teams like Ecuador. But here is the terrifying reality of the 2026 bracket. Winning the group, it doesn't reward you. It drops you right into the fire. If they finish first, they enter what we call the Champions Path. In the round of 16, they likely face France. Yeah, that means an early knockout clash with Kylian Mbappe. Survive that, and the quarterfinal brings the Netherlands. Pull off a miracle there, and waiting in the semifinal is the Raging Bull of Spain, the exact same team that knocked them out of Euro 2024. It is an absolute nightmare gauntlet. But wait, what if they somehow stumble into second place? Well, the runner-up nightmare might actually be worse. Think about a round of 16 clash against the agility of Brazil, then a quarterfinal heavyweight bout against the Lions of England. And to top it off, a semifinal against the scorching heat of Argentina or Portugal. The major takeaway here, there is literally no easy path. They have to beat 3 or 4 world-class giants in a row just to lift the trophy. Which brings us to the final verdict. Can Germany actually win again? The honest truth is, this team is miles ahead of the squad that crashed out so painfully in 2022. They are technically stronger, they're sharper, and they finally have an attacking balance that makes them incredibly dangerous on the break. But those unresolved issues, the sheer stubbornness over Deniz Undav, the defensive vulnerabilities of forcing Kimmich at right back, and that massive Manuel Neuer elephant in the room, those are the exact cracks that elite teams like France or Brazil will absolutely exploit when the pressure's on in the knockout stages. And that is exactly why the numbers tell a very, very sobering story. Based on current data and that brutally tough path ahead, Germany is currently being given just a 7% chance of winning the 2026 World Cup. Just 7%. It really puts the sheer mountain Julian Nagelsmann has to climb into stark perspective. So, as we watch this incredible, flawed, highly dramatic team head toward North America, we have to ask ourselves one final thing. With all this young, attacking brilliance, balanced on an absolute knife edge of internal tension, is this the return of a football empire or another false dawn? I'll leave you to ponder that. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.